The text came in at 7:43 p.m., just as I was spooning lukewarm soup into my mother's mouth at Mercy General Hospital. Going to bed early tonight. Don't call after 8, exhausted from parent conferences. Love you. I stared at Megan's message, watching my mom's frail fingers pick at the hospital blanket. 22 years of marriage, and my wife had never once told me not to call her. Not during her worst migraines, not during finals week when she graded papers until midnight, not even when she had the flu last winter and could barely speak. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Stephen, honey, you look like someone walked over your grave, Mom wheezed, her voice barely audible over the oxygen machine's steady hum. Just work stuff, Ma. Nothing I can't handle. I forced a smile, but something cold was settling in my stomach. Call it intuition. Call it paranoia. 20 years in IT had taught me that when systems start behaving differently, there's usually a reason. I helped Mom finish her soup, kissed her forehead, and promised to visit tomorrow. The drive home through downtown Providence should have taken 30 minutes, but I found myself taking the long way, my mind churning. Megan had been distant lately, coming home later, spending more time on her phone, claiming exhaustion every time I suggested we do something together. Our house sat dark when I pulled into the driveway. No lights in the living room, no glow from the bedroom TV where Megan usually watched her crime shows. For someone who was supposedly exhausted and going to bed early, she sure was committed to the performance. I sat in my car for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled. The smart thing would be to go inside, heat up some leftover pizza, and trust my wife of 22 years. The suspicious thing would be to check the GPS app we'd installed on each other's phones after Megan got lost during a school field trip last year. I chose suspicious. My phone's screen glowed as I opened the app. 2 blue dots appeared on the map, mine in our driveway and Megan's at the Sunset Motel on Route 1. Well, shit, I muttered, taking a screenshot before the evidence could disappear. The timestamp showed 8:17 p.m., so much for going to bed early. The Sunset Motel was a 40-year-old relic that rented rooms by the hour to truckers and people who couldn't afford better. It was also 15 minutes from Riverside High School, where Megan taught 10th grade English, close enough for a lunch break, or an after-school conference. I drove there on autopilot, my hands steady on the wheel even as my world tilted sideways. The motel's neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting pink shadows across the cracked parking lot. I spotted Megan's silver Honda Civic immediately. She'd had the same car for 8 years, and I'd changed the oil in it dozens of times. Parked right next to it was a black Ford F-150 with Riverside High School faculty parking stickers. I knew that truck. Eric Dawes, the gym teacher who'd started at Riverside 3 years ago. The guy Megan had mentioned exactly twice in casual conversation, both times to complain about how loud he was in the faculty lounge. Apparently, she'd gotten over that complaint. I sat in my car across the street, taking pictures with my phone's camera. The timestamp, the license plates, the room number, 112. Every piece of evidence carefully documented, because that's what you do when your entire life is about to implode. You gather data. At 9:23 p.m., the door to room 112 opened. Eric emerged first, stretching like he'd just finished a workout. He was everything I wasn't. 6'2", broad shoulders, the kind of guy who looked good in a tight t-shirt. Behind him, Megan appeared in the doorway, her hair mussed, wearing the same blue dress she'd had on when she kissed me goodbye that morning. They talked for a moment, too quietly for me to hear. Then, Eric cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Not a friendly peck, not a goodbye between colleagues. A kiss that made my 22 years of marriage feel like a joke. I took 17 more pictures. They separated, got in their respective vehicles, and drove away in different directions. I waited until their taillights disappeared before starting my engine. At home, I found Megan's car in the garage, her purse on the kitchen counter, and the sound of running water from upstairs. She was in the shower, washing away the evidence, I supposed. I sat at my computer and uploaded the photos to a secure folder, then created a backup on an encrypted drive. Old habits from my IT days. Always have redundancy. "Stephen?" Megan called from upstairs. "You're home late." "Stopped by to see Mom," I called back, my voice surprisingly steady. "How was your evening?" "Exhausting. Parent conferences ran forever, then I came straight home and crashed. I was gone to the world until I heard your car." Lie number 1. Or maybe lie number 50. Who knew how long this had been going on? She came downstairs 20 minutes later, hair damp, wearing her favorite flannel pajamas. She looked like the woman I'd married, the woman who used to grade papers at our kitchen table while I worked on freelance coding projects. The woman who'd held my hand during my father's funeral and stayed up all night when I had food poisoning last spring. "You look tired," she said, kissing my cheek. Her skin smelled like our lavender body wash, but underneath it was something else. Cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "Long day," I said. "Mom's not doing great." "I'm sorry, honey. I know how hard this is for you." Her voice was soft, concerned, perfect. If I hadn't seen her coming out of that motel room, I might have believed she actually cared. "Yeah, well, we all have our crosses to bear." She gave me a strange look. "That's an odd thing to say." "Is it? I don't know anymore. Sometimes I think I don't know anything. Stephen, are you okay? You're being weird." I looked at my wife, really looked at her. The woman who'd promised to love, honor, and cherish me. The woman who was apparently cherishing Eric Dawes at the Sunset Motel. "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired. I think I'll sleep in the guest room tonight so I don't keep you awake." Relief flashed across her face so quickly I almost missed it. "Okay, that's probably smart. I have an early faculty meeting tomorrow." Another lie. I'd already checked the school calendar online. No meetings scheduled for tomorrow morning. I gathered my pillow and headed for the guest room, leaving Megan alone with whatever story she was telling herself to justify what she'd done. In the dark, staring at the ceiling, I thought about 22 years of marriage, 22 years of shared dreams, inside jokes, and quiet Sunday mornings. 22 years that had apparently meant so little to her that she was willing to throw them away for a gym teacher with nice shoulders and a pickup truck. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. "Love you. Sorry if I've been distant lately. Work stress. I'll make it up to you this weekend." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching private investigators in Providence. If Megan wanted to play games, I'd make sure I knew all the rules first. Miles Green looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for a private investigator. Rumpled suit, 3-day stubble, and the kind of eyes that had seen too much of humanity's worst impulses. We met at Murphy's Diner on Federal Hill, where the coffee was strong enough to wake anyone and the waitresses minded their own business. "So your wife's cheating," Miles said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "You got proof?" I slid my phone across the table, showing him the photos from the motel. He studied them with professional detachment, occasionally grunting approval. "GPS timestamps, license plates, clear facial recognition. You do good work for an amateur." He handed the phone back. "What do you want from me?" "More proof, documentation. I want to know how long this has been going on, how many people know about it, and what they're planning." Planning? Megan's not stupid. If she's willing to risk our marriage for this guy, she's got an exit strategy. I want to know what it is before she springs it on me. Miles nodded. "Smart. Most guys in your situation just want to catch them in bed together, get their revenge, feel better about themselves. You're thinking like a chess player. 20 years in IT teaches you to think several moves ahead. This is going to cost you. Surveillance, background checks, electronic monitoring, it adds up fast." I pulled out an envelope containing $5,000 in cash. "Will this cover it?" Miles raised an eyebrow. "Where'd you get this kind of money?" I've been freelancing on weekends for 3 years, building up an emergency fund. Turns out this qualifies as an emergency. Fair enough. Give me 2 weeks. While Miles did his investigating, I conducted my own digital reconnaissance. Megan had always been careless with technology. She used the same password for everything, never cleared her browser history, and had no idea I'd set up automatic backups of her phone to our shared cloud account. I spent my lunch breaks at work going through her data. Text messages, emails, photos, call logs. Everything was there if you knew where to look. And after 20 years in IT, I definitely knew where to look. The affair had started 4 months ago. It began innocently enough. Eric asking Megan for advice about handling a difficult parent, Megan offering to help him with some paperwork. Professional courtesy between colleagues. Then the messages got friendlier. Compliments about her teaching skills, jokes about the principal's bad toupee, invitations to grab coffee after school. The first coffee date happened 6 weeks ago. Judging by the timestamps, it lasted 3 hours. The next day, Eric texted, "Had such a great time yesterday. You're amazing to talk to." Megan's response, "I haven't felt this alive in years." That stung worse than I'd expected. 22 years of marriage, and she hadn't felt alive. Good to know. The messages escalated quickly after that. Within 2 weeks, they were meeting at the motel twice a week. The conversations turned intimate, then explicit. I read every word, screenshotted every exchange, and filed them away in my growing evidence folder. But the worst part wasn't the sexual content. It was the way they talked about me. "Steven's working late again," Megan had texted last Tuesday. "Sometimes I think he cares more about his computers than his wife." Eric's response, "His loss is my gain. Can you get away tonight?" Probably. He won't even notice I'm gone. They were right about that. I'd been so focused on taking care of Mom, managing her medical bills and insurance claims, that I'd barely noticed my marriage falling apart. But I was noticing now. The really damaging stuff came from Megan's conversations with her best friend, Sherry Lindell. Sherry knew everything. When the affair started, where they met, how Megan felt about it. She was like a cheerleader for adultery. "You deserve to be happy," Sherry had texted after Megan's 3rd motel visit. "Steven's a nice guy, but he's boring. Eric makes you feel like a woman again." "I know I should feel guilty," Megan replied. "But I don't. Is that terrible?" "It's honest. Life's too short to settle for boring." Boring. 22 years of marriage, and I was boring. I'd supported Megan through her master's degree, held her when her father died, celebrated every promotion and achievement, but apparently that was boring compared to sneaking around with a gym teacher. Miles called me on a Thursday afternoon while I was debugging code for a client. "We need to meet," he said. "I've got news." This time we met at his office, a cramped space above a bail bondsman on Westminster Street. The walls were covered with certificates, old newspaper clippings, and a photo of Miles in his police uniform from 20 years ago. "Your wife's boyfriend has a history," Miles said, opening a thick folder. "Eric Dawes, 36, divorced twice. Both ex-wives cited adultery in their divorce filings. He's done this before. Multiple times. I talked to his first ex-wife, Jennifer. She was happy to share. Turns out Eric has a pattern. He targets married women, usually teachers or other school employees, makes them feel special, tells them their husbands don't appreciate them, then moves on when things get complicated." "What about wife number 2? "Rebecca. Same story, different details. He was screwing around with a substitute teacher while they were married. Rebecca found out when the other woman's husband called her." Miles pulled out more documents. "Here's the interesting part. Both ex-wives mentioned that Eric liked to talk about his conquests. He'd brag to his buddies about the married women he was sleeping with, share details about their personal lives." My hands clenched into fists. He's talking about Megan. Probably. I've got a contact at Riverside High who says Eric's been pretty smug lately. making jokes about older women and how experience beats youth every time. Son of a bitch. There's more. Your wife isn't his only current project. He's also been seen around town with Carol Martinez, who teaches 3rd grade at Elmwood Elementary. She's married, too. The room felt like it was spinning. Megan thought she was special, thought she'd found someone who truly understood her. In reality, she was just another conquest for a serial cheater who collected married women like trophies. I want everything, I said. Photos, videos, witness statements. I want enough evidence to bury both of them. Miles leaned back in his chair. Stephen, I gotta ask, what's your endgame here? You planning to divorce her? I'm planning to make sure she gets exactly what she deserves. Nothing more, nothing less. That's not really an answer. I stood up, pulling out another envelope of cash. It's the only answer you need. Can you do the job or not? Miles took the money. I can do the job, but be careful, Stephen. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but it can poison the cook if you're not careful. I'll take my chances. That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by printouts of text messages, hotel receipts, and surveillance photos. 22 years of marriage spread across my desk like evidence in a murder case. In a way, I supposed it was. The Stephen Brooks who'd trusted his wife, who'd believed in the sanctity of marriage, who'd thought love could conquer all, that guy was gone. What was left was someone harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Megan was in the living room, grading papers and watching some reality show about housewives. She looked peaceful, content, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. Stephen? She called. Are you coming to bed soon? In a little while, I called back. Just finishing up some work. Don't stay up too late. You've been working so hard lately. If she only knew what kind of work I was doing. I opened a new document on my computer and began typing. Not a divorce filing, not yet. Something much more comprehensive. A complete dossier on my wife's affair, cross-referenced and indexed with supporting documentation and witness statements. When I was done, Megan Brooks and Eric Dawes wouldn't just lose their marriage and their jobs. They'd lose their reputations, their standing in the community, and any hope of quietly moving on with their lives. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they were about to learn that in any game involving technology and information, the IT guy always wins. The beauty of working in IT is that you understand systems, not just computer systems, but the interconnected networks that run people's lives. Bank accounts, credit cards, insurance policies, social media, email, cloud storage, it's all connected. And if you know where to pull the right strings, you can unravel someone's entire existence without them realizing what's happening until it's too late. I started small. Megan had always been careless about financial security, letting me handle all the bills and banking while she focused on her teaching career. She had no idea I'd been quietly documenting every transaction, every automatic payment, every shared account and asset we'd accumulated over 22 years. On a rainy Tuesday morning, while Megan was at school and I was supposedly working from home, I began the systematic dismantling of her comfortable life. First, I transferred our joint savings account, $43,000, into a new account that only I could access. Legally, it was half mine anyway, and I had documentation showing that most of the money came from my freelance work and my mother's medical insurance payouts. Next, I called our credit card companies. I need to report suspicious activity on my wife's card, I told each customer service representative. Someone's been using it for unauthorized charges at local hotels. Which was technically true. I just didn't mention that the someone was Megan herself. The cards were frozen pending investigation. It would take weeks to sort out, assuming Megan could even prove the charges were legitimate. Good luck explaining why she was paying for motel rooms with our joint credit card. Then I tackled the utilities. Our house was in both our names, but I'd been paying all the bills for 22 years. A few phone calls later, I'd transferred everything to my name only. electric, gas, water, internet, cable. All of it now required my authorization to change or cancel. The cell phone plan was trickier, but not impossible. Megan's phone was on our family plan, which I managed through my online account. I didn't cancel her service. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I changed her plan to the most basic option available and set up parental controls that blocked access to social media and dating apps during school hours. Let her try to coordinate her affair when she couldn't even send a text message between 8 and 4. While I worked, my phone buzzed with updates from Miles. He'd been busy too, gathering evidence and building our case. "Got something interesting," his text read. "Eric's been bragging to the other coaches about his English teacher. Says she's going to leave her husband soon." That stopped me cold. Leave me? Megan had never mentioned divorce, never even hinted that she was unhappy enough to end our marriage. But apparently, she'd been discussing it with Eric. I called Miles immediately. What exactly did he say? According to my source, Eric told the other gym teachers that his older woman was planning to file for divorce after Christmas. Said she was just waiting for the right time to break the news to her husband. Did he mention anything about money? Property division? Funny you should ask. Apparently, Eric's been asking questions about teachers' pension benefits and how they get divided in a divorce. Real subtle, this guy. So that was their plan. Megan would file for divorce, claim irreconcilable differences, and walk away with half our assets and her full pension. Meanwhile, Eric would be waiting in the wings, ready to console the newly single English teacher. It was actually a decent strategy, assuming I was the clueless husband they thought I was. "Miles, I need you to do something for me. I want you to approach Eric directly." "That's not usually how this works, Stephen. Surveillance is supposed to be covert." "I don't want surveillance anymore. I want him to know he's been caught." There was a long pause. "What are you planning?" "Trust me. Just make contact. Let him know that Megan's husband is asking questions." "And then what?" "Then we see how loyal he is when the pressure's on." That evening, I was waiting in the kitchen when Megan came home from school. She looked frustrated, her hair disheveled and her usually perfect makeup smudged. "Rough day?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "The weirdest thing happened. My credit card got declined at lunch, and when I called the company, they said there was suspicious activity on my account." "Huh, that's strange. And my phone's been acting up all day. I couldn't get on Facebook or Instagram, and my texts kept failing to send." "Technology problems, they happen." She stared at me for a long moment. "Stephen, is everything okay? You've been acting strange lately." "Strange how?" "Distant. Secretive. You're always on your computer and you've been asking weird questions about my schedule." I closed my laptop and looked at her directly. "I've been worried about Mom. The doctors think she might need to go into hospice care soon." It wasn't entirely a lie. Mom's condition was deteriorating. But it wasn't the whole truth either. Megan's expression softened. "Oh, honey, I'm sorry. Why didn't you tell me? You've seemed pretty preoccupied lately. I didn't want to burden you with my problems." "Your problems are my problems. We're married, remember?" The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. "Speaking of marriage," I said casually, "Sherry called me today." Megan went very still. "Sherry called you? Why?" "She wanted to plan a surprise party for your birthday next month. Asked me some questions about your schedule, who you've been spending time with lately." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That I have no idea who you spend time with anymore." Megan's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and I saw her face go pale. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine, just school stuff." But it wasn't school stuff. I knew because I'd been monitoring her text messages all day, and the only new message was from Eric. "We need to talk. Someone's asking questions." Miles worked fast. By Thursday afternoon, Eric was rattled enough to make mistakes. He called Megan during her lunch break, forgetting that phone calls were easier to trace than text messages. "Stephen, we have a problem," Miles reported. "Your boy Eric is starting to panic. He thinks someone's investigating him." "Good. What's he doing about it?" "Trying to convince your wife to back off. Told her they should cool things down for a while until the heat dies down." "And Megan's response?" "Not happy. She thinks he's abandoning her." "Perfect. Nothing destroys a relationship faster than one partner losing their nerve when things get complicated." I decided it was time to accelerate the timeline. That Friday evening, I suggested that Megan and I go out to dinner, something we hadn't done in months. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her over appetizers at Romano's, our old anniversary restaurant. "About me being distant lately. You're right. I've been so focused on work and Mom that I've been neglecting us." Megan looked genuinely surprised. "Stephen, you don't need to—" "Yes, I do. We've been married 22 years, Megan. That means something. It means we fight for each other, support each other, stay loyal to each other no matter what." She couldn't meet my eyes. "Of course. I want us to renew our wedding vows," I continued. "Maybe next spring, when Mom's feeling better. Invite all our friends and family, make it a real celebration of our commitment to each other." That's a wonderful idea," she said, but her voice was strained. "We could even invite your colleagues from school. I know how important they are to you. What's that gym teacher's name? Eric something?" Megan nearly choked on her wine. "Eric Dawes. But I don't think, he's not really someone we socialize with." "No? I thought you mentioned him before. Didn't you help him with some paperwork or something?" "Just once. Professional courtesy." Another lie to add to the growing pile. After dinner, we drove home in silence. Megan stared out the window, her phone buzzing constantly with what I assumed were increasingly frantic messages from Eric. "Honey," she said as we pulled into our driveway, "I think I might be coming down with something. Would you mind if I went to bed early?" "Of course not. Take care of yourself." But she wasn't going to bed early. According to the GPS tracker I'd installed on her car, she was going to the Sunset Motel for what would turn out to be her final meeting with Eric Dawes. I knew because I was planning to be there too. The Sunset Motel looked even more depressing in the harsh glare of the parking lot lights. I sat in my car across the street, watching Megan's Honda pull up next to Eric's pickup truck. They'd been inside room 112 for 20 minutes when Miles arrived in his beat-up Crown Victoria. "You sure about this?" he asked, sliding into my passenger seat. "I'm sure. Because once we do this, there's no going back. Your marriage is over, their careers are probably finished, and you'll have made some serious enemies. My marriage was over the moment she chose him over me. I'm just making it official." Miles nodded grimly. "Okay. You ready?" I pulled out my phone and opened the video recording app. "Let's go." We crossed the street and approached room 112. The curtains were drawn, but we could hear voices inside. Megan's laugh, Eric's deeper rumble, the unmistakable sounds of two people who thought they were safe and hidden. Miles positioned himself by the window while I stood in front of the door. Then I knocked. The voices inside stopped immediately. "Room service," I called out, disguising my voice. "We didn't order room service." Eric's voice, suspicious now. "Complimentary champagne from management." Footsteps approached the door. I heard the security chain rattle, then the deadbolt turned. Eric opened the door just wide enough to peer out, and his face went white when he saw me. "Hello, Eric," I said pleasantly. "Mind if I come in?" He tried to slam the door, but I'd already wedged my foot in the gap. Behind him, I could see Megan sitting on the bed, clutching a sheet to her chest, her face a mask of horror. "Stephen, I can explain," she started. "No need," I said, pushing past Eric into the room. "I think the situation is pretty clear." Miles followed me inside, his phone out and recording. Eric backed against the wall, looking like he wanted to disappear. "You're Steven," he said unnecessarily. "I am, and you're the gym teacher who's been screwing my wife. Look, man, I never meant for this to happen. Really, because I have text messages that suggest otherwise. Lots of them." Megan had found her voice. "Steven, please, let's go home and talk about this." "Talk? Like we talked when you told me you were going to bed early? Or like we talked when you said you were working late?" "I know you're angry." "Angry?" I laughed, and the sound was cold even to my own ears. "Megan, I'm way past angry. I'm in problem-solving mode now." Eric tried to edge toward the door. "Maybe I should leave you two alone." "Stay right where you are," Miles said, blocking his path. "We're all going to have a nice conversation." I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through screenshots. Let's see. Here's a good one. "Steven won't even notice I'm gone." That was from last Tuesday, Megan. "Want to guess what I was doing while you were here with Eric?" She didn't answer. "I was at the hospital with my dying mother, making arrangements for her hospice care. But you're right, I didn't notice you were gone. I was too busy dealing with real problems to pay attention to your little midlife crisis." "That's not fair," Megan said, tears starting to flow. "You've been emotionally unavailable for months. So you decided to become physically unavailable? That's your solution to marital problems?" Eric finally found his courage. "Look, Steven, I know this looks bad, but Megan and I have something real. She's not happy in your marriage and hasn't been for a long time." "Is that what she told you? That she's been unhappy?" "Yes." "Did she also tell you that she's been planning to divorce me and take half my assets?" Eric's confidence faltered. "What?" I looked at Megan. "You didn't mention that part, did you? The part where you've been discussing our finances with your boyfriend, planning your exit strategy?" "Steven, that's not—" "Eric, did you know that Megan has been paying for these motel rooms with our joint credit card? The one that's connected to our joint bank account, which she was planning to clean out before filing for divorce?" Eric stared at Megan. "You said you were paying cash." "I was going to—" "You were going to what? Cover your tracks better?" I pulled out more screenshots. Here's another interesting conversation. "Eric says I should wait until after Christmas to file. Give us time to plan our future together." That's from your text thread with Sherry. The color drained from Eric's face. "You've been planning this for months?" "Eric, let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been using me to get back at your husband? That this was all some elaborate plan to get out of your marriage? That's not true." But Eric was backing away from her now, the same way he'd backed away from me. "Jesus Christ, Megan, I thought you loved me." "I do love you. You love the idea of me. You love having someone to help you blow up your life so you don't have to take responsibility for doing it yourself." Miles was getting everything on video. The accusations, the denials, the moment when Eric realized he'd been played just as much as I had. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, addressing both of them. "Megan, you're going to pack your things and get out of my house. Tonight. Steven, please. Eric, you're going to stay away from my wife, permanently." "That's not a problem," Eric said, grabbing his clothes from the floor. "I'm done with this whole situation." "Wait," Megan said, reaching for him. "Eric, don't leave. We can work this out." He shook her off. "Work what out, Megan? You lied to me about everything. Your marriage, your feelings, your plans. I'm not going to be your escape hatch anymore." "But I love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of starting over, and you thought I'd be dumb enough to help you do it." He pulled on his shirt and headed for the door. Find another sucker. And just like that, Eric Dawes walked out of Megan's life as quickly as he'd entered it. Megan collapsed back onto the bed, sobbing. "Steven, please. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But we can fix this." "No, we can't." "Yes, we can. I'll end things with Eric." "Eric just ended things with you. Did you miss that part?" "Then it's over. It's done. We can go to counseling. We can work through this." Megan, look at me. She raised her tear-stained face. I don't want to work through this. I don't want to go to counseling. I don't want to forgive you or give you another chance or pretend this never happened. But we're married. We were married. Past tense. You ended our marriage the first time you walked into this room with him. Stephen, please. I want you out of my house by tomorrow night. Take whatever you can fit in your car. We'll figure out the rest through lawyers. I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Oh, and Megan? I've already moved our money into accounts you can't access, canceled your credit cards, and changed all the passwords. Your phone service will be disconnected tomorrow, and I've sent copies of all your text messages to Principal Morrison at Riverside High. Her face went white. You didn't. I did. Along with photos from tonight and a detailed timeline of your affair. I thought he should know what kind of professional development his teachers have been doing after school. Stephen, you can't. My job. Should have thought about that before you decided to screw around with a colleague. Miles and I walked out, leaving Megan alone in the motel room with the wreckage of her choices. In the parking lot, Miles lit a cigarette and shook his head. That was brutal, Stephen. It was necessary. You really send those messages to her principal? Not yet, but I will if she tries to fight the divorce or make any trouble. And the bank accounts? Secured, along with documentation showing that most of the money came from my work and my mother's medical settlements. Miles took a long drag. You've been planning this for weeks. I've been planning this since the night I found out she was cheating. I just needed enough evidence to make it stick. What happens now? I looked back at the motel, where Megan's silhouette was visible through the curtained window. She was still sitting on the bed, probably trying to figure out how her perfect plan had fallen apart so completely. Now she learns what happens when you betray someone who understands systems better than you do. Miles flicked his cigarette into the parking lot. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Too late for that advice, Miles, but I'll keep it in mind for next time. We got in our cars and drove away, leaving Megan alone with her choices and their consequences. The game was over. I'd won. But somehow, victory felt a lot colder than I'd expected. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office signing the final divorce papers. Megan had tried to fight it at first, claiming emotional distress and demanding half our assets. That lasted exactly until her attorney saw the evidence Miles and I had compiled. Your wife has agreed to a no-contest divorce, my lawyer, Patricia Chen, explained. She gets her personal belongings, her car, and her teacher's pension when she retires. You keep the house, the savings, and all business assets. What about alimony? Waived. Given the circumstances of the marriage breakdown, she was advised not to push for additional compensation. The circumstances. That was lawyer speak for, she got caught cheating and doesn't have a leg to stand on. There is one complication, Patricia continued. Mrs. Brooks has filed a complaint with the police, claiming you hacked her phone and invaded her privacy. I'd been expecting this. And? The district attorney reviewed the case and declined to prosecute. Apparently, monitoring a shared family phone plan doesn't constitute illegal surveillance, especially when you're the account holder. Good to know. Stephen, I have to ask, are you satisfied with this outcome? I thought about it. Megan had lost our marriage, our house, and most of our shared assets. She'd also lost her job at Riverside High after the school board decided that her conduct unbecoming a professional educator warranted immediate termination. Eric had been fired too, though he'd already moved out of state by then. I'm satisfied, I said, but satisfaction and happiness weren't the same thing. I'd won the war, but the victory felt hollow. 22 years of marriage don't just disappear because you've successfully destroyed your ex-wife's life. I was thinking about this as I drove home from the lawyer's office, home to a house that felt too big and too quiet, where Megan's absence was like a missing tooth, something you couldn't stop probing with your tongue even though it hurt. My phone rang as I pulled into the driveway. Mom's number. Stephen, can you come to the hospital? I'm not feeling well. I found her in the emergency room, looking smaller and frailer than ever. The doctor said it was pneumonia, complicated by her underlying condition. They wanted to admit her for observation. "Where's Megan?" Mom asked, as I helped her into a hospital gown. I hadn't told her about the divorce yet. She'd been too sick, and I hadn't wanted to burden her with my problems. "She couldn't make it tonight, Ma. Work stuff." "You two have been having problems, haven't you?" I should have known better than to try to hide anything from her. Mom had raised 3 kids and been married for 40 years before Dad died. She could spot relationship trouble from a mile away. "Yeah, Ma, we've been having problems. Want to talk about it?" So I told her everything. The affair, the investigation, the divorce, all of it. She listened without interrupting, occasionally patting my hand when the story got particularly painful. "I'm sorry, honey," she said when I finished. "I know you loved her." "I did. I really did." "Do you think she loved you?" "I thought she did. But maybe I was wrong about that too." Mom was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "Stephen, can I give you some advice?" "Of course." "Don't let this make you bitter. Megan made her choices and she's paying for them. But if you hold on to this anger, if you let it poison you, then she's taken more from you than just your marriage." "I'm not angry anymore, Ma. I'm just empty." "Empty is better than bitter. Empty can be filled with new things. Bitter just spreads." The next morning, I was back at the hospital when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stephen, this is Sherry. We need to talk." Sherry Lindell, Megan's former best friend and chief enabler. I hadn't heard from her since the divorce proceedings started. "What about?" I texted back. "Megan, she's not doing well. Not my problem anymore. She's been staying with me since she lost her apartment. Stephen, she's talking about hurting herself." That stopped me cold. Whatever I felt about Megan, anger, betrayal, disappointment, I didn't want her to hurt herself. "What do you want me to do about it?" "Talk to her. She still loves you. She has a funny way of showing it. Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Sherry at a coffee shop downtown. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Thank you for coming," she said, as I sat down across from her. "Where's Megan?" "At my apartment. She's been there for 2 weeks, mostly just lying in bed and crying." "Sherry, I'm not trying to be cruel, but this isn't my responsibility anymore." "I know, but Stephen, she's really messed up. She lost her job, her marriage, her home. She has nothing left. She made her choices. I know she did, and I know I encouraged her, which I regret now, but she's talking about ending things." "Ending what things?" "Everything, her life." The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot, too crowded. "Has she actually threatened suicide?" "Not in so many words, but she keeps saying she has nothing left to live for, that she's ruined everything, that everyone would be better off without her. She needs professional help, Sherry, a therapist, not her ex-husband. She won't go. She says she's too ashamed." "Then that's her choice, too." Sherry leaned forward. "Stephen, I know you hate her. I know you have every right to hate her. But she's a human being, and she's in pain." So was I. For months. While she was sneaking around behind my back, planning to leave me, I was in pain. Did she care about that? No, she didn't. And that was wrong. Damn right it was wrong. But 2 wrongs don't make a right. I stood up. "Sherry, I'm sorry Megan is having a hard time. I really am. But I can't fix her life. I couldn't fix our marriage, and I can't fix this. So you won't talk to her?" There's nothing left to say. I walked out of the coffee shop and drove back to the hospital where Mom was awake and asking for ice chips. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Better. The antibiotics are helping." She studied my face. "You look upset. What happened?" I told her about my conversation with Sherry. "And you said no?" "I said no. Mom, I can't be responsible for Megan's mental health, not after what she did. I'm not saying you should be responsible for her, but maybe you could find it in your heart to show her some compassion. Why? She didn't show me any. Because you're better than she is. That's why you won, Stephen. You're smarter, you're more honest, and you're stronger. Don't throw that away by becoming as selfish as she was. That night, I sat in my empty house, thinking about what Mom had said. The rational part of my mind knew I didn't owe Megan anything. She'd betrayed our marriage, lied to my face for months, and planned to take half my assets while running off with another man. But the part of me that had loved her for 22 years, the part that remembered holding her hand during her father's funeral and celebrating her teaching awards, that part was having a harder time staying cold. At 11 p.m., I drove to Sherry's apartment. Megan answered the door looking like a ghost of herself. She'd lost weight, her hair was unwashed, and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. "Stephen?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside, and I followed her into Sherry's living room. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the distance between us feeling like an ocean. "Sherry said you wanted to talk," I said. "I didn't ask her to call you. But you're glad she did?" Megan looked at her hands. "I don't know. Maybe. She's worried about you." "She shouldn't be. This is what I deserve." "Megan, look at me." She raised her eyes, and I saw something in them I'd never seen before. Complete defeat. "Are you thinking about hurting yourself?" "Sometimes. That's not the answer." "What is the answer, Stephen? I lost everything. My job, my marriage, my home, my reputation. I have nothing left." "You have your life." "Do I? What kind of life?" "I'm 35 years old, unemployed, living on my friend's couch, and everyone in town knows what I did." "So you start over somewhere else?" "With what? I can't get a teaching job anywhere, not with the way I was fired. I have no money, no references, no prospects." "Then you find something else to do. You're smart, you're educated. I'm a cheater and a liar who destroyed her marriage for a man who dumped her the second things got complicated." I couldn't argue with that assessment. "Megan, I didn't come here to make you feel better about what you did. You made your choices, and you have to live with the consequences." "Then why did you come?" "Because despite everything, I don't want you to hurt yourself." "Why not? It would solve all your problems." "No, it wouldn't. It would create new ones." She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "I'm sorry, Stephen, for all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it." "Why did you do it, Megan? Really?" "I don't know. I felt invisible. Like I was disappearing a little bit every day. You were so focused on work and your mother, and I felt like I didn't matter anymore." "So you had an affair?" "So I had an affair, and I told myself it was your fault, that you'd driven me to it by neglecting me, but that was just an excuse." "Yes, it was. The truth is I was bored. Bored with my life, bored with our marriage, bored with being a responsible adult. Eric made me feel young and exciting and desirable, and I was selfish enough to throw away 22 years of marriage for that feeling." It was the most honest thing she'd said to me in months. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. "I don't know. Sherry says I can stay here until I figure something out. Maybe I'll move somewhere else, try to start over." "That's probably a good idea." "Stephen?" "Yeah?" "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "Maybe someday, but not today." "That's fair." I stood up to leave. "Megan, promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you won't hurt yourself. Whatever you decide to do with your life, promise me you won't end it." "I promise." "Good." I walked to the door, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I did love you. For 22 years, I loved you more than anything in the world." "I know. And I loved you too. I just forgot how to show it." "Yeah, you did." I left her there on Sherry's couch, surrounded by the wreckage of her choices. 2 weeks later, I heard she'd moved to California to live with her sister. I never saw her again. Mom died 3 months after that, peacefully in her sleep at the hospice facility. At her funeral, I realized that the anger I'd carried for so long had finally burned itself out. I wasn't bitter anymore, just sad, for my mother, for my marriage, for the way things had ended. But I wasn't empty either. Mom had been right about that. Empty could be filled with new things. I sold the house and moved closer to downtown Providence. I started dating again, carefully, slowly, but with an open heart. I expanded my freelance business and began teaching computer classes at the community college. Life went on, different than before, but not necessarily worse. And sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I wondered if Megan had managed to build something new out of the ashes of her old life. I hoped she had. Despite everything, I hoped she'd found a way to be happy. But I never tried to find out. Some stories don't have happy endings. Some stories just have endings. This was one of those stories.